Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We're delighted to be here tonight to celebrate Reclaim the Stars, 17 Tales Across Realms and Space. It is a beautiful book. Mark Oshiro is holding it. Everybody's holding it up so you can see it. I love the cover. It's so pretty. And we are honored to get to celebrate with four of the folks who have made this book possible tonight. So first, I will introduce Zoraida Córdova, who is the acclaimed author of more than a dozen novels and short stories, including the Brooklyn Brujas series, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, and so many more. She serves on the board of We Need Diverse Books and is the co-editor of the best-selling anthology Vampires Never Get Old. She is the co-host of the writing podcast Deadline City and writes romance novels as Zoe Castile. Zoraida was born in Ecuador and calls New York City home. When she is not writing, she is roaming the world in search of magical stories. And Charis has had the honor of hosting many events with Zoraida, and so it was really a great honor to get to celebrate this book with you, so welcome. Next, we have Mark Oshiro. Mark uses they and he pronouns. I should have said Zoraida uses she and her pronouns. Mark is the Hugo-nominated writer of the online Mark Does Stuff universe, Mark Reads, and Mark Watches, where they analyze book and TV series. Their debut novel, Anger is a Gift, was a recipient of the Schneider Family Book Award for 2019. Their lifelong goal is to pet every dog in the world. And they recently joined us in Atlanta, which we're super excited about. So glad that you are now part of our extended Atlanta crew. Yes. And we're joined by Linda Raquel Nieves Pérez, who is an Afro-Borican writer born on a rainy night in Arequipa. I'm going to say that wrong. I apologize. Arecibo, Puerto Rico, which they often blame for their obsession with writing water goddesses with stormy tempers. Her goal is to see more curls and fat bodies portrayed in the books they read. When she's not buried between casebooks and sketchbooks, you can find her talking about her latest reads and Pride and Prejudice on Twitter at Miss Linda Bennett and on Instagram at linda.reads. Linda uses she and they pronouns. And finally, last but not least, Lillian Rivera is an award-winning author of the young adult novels Never Look Back, a Pura Belpré honor winner, Dealing in Dreams, and The Education of Margot Sanchez, as well as the Goldie Vance series for middle grade readers and the standalone middle grade novel Barely Floating. Her latest works include a young adult science fiction novel, We Light Up the Sky, for Bloomsbury, which came out October 5th of 2021, and a graphic novel for DC Comics, Unearthed, a Jessica Cruz story, which came out September of 2021. Both were named Best Books of 2021 by Kirkus Review and School Library Journal. Her work has appeared in the Washington Post, the New York Times, and Elle Magazine, to name a few, and she currently lives in Los Angeles, California. So welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for celebrating this beautiful book with us. Welcome to everybody who is watching in the chat. Delighted to have y'all here. I'm glad that it's already popping, so keep that energy alive. I know it's going to be fun. Every event we have with Zoraida is fun. So, shout out where you're watching from, shout out your questions out. You can put them in the chat or in the ask a question box, and we'll go from there. But thank you all so much for being here. It's great to have you as always.
Thank you so much, ER, for having us. Well, my beautiful authors, I am so grateful that you let me lead you down this chaotic rabbit hole of an anthology. Anthologies, I feel like, are a chaos on their own because everybody brings a different energy. Everybody brings in a different version of the world. And I'm just so proud of every single story that you guys have put together. And yeah, so let's get this party started. I'm going to start off with a question, a very serious question. Tell me about your story. Mark.
I wrote it. Here we go. Let's go.
I wrote it.
So hi everyone. Hi everyone in the chat. I'm so glad I'm part of here to just make everything chaos. Also, is that Crystal Maldonado? Crystal?
Yeah, Crystal. I think so.
Hi, Crystal. So yes, I wrote a short story called "This Is Our Manifesto." That is a how would I describe it? It is the audio record of a manifesto left behind by a group of teenagers who are acting out a jailbreak on a planetary prison. It is my little jailbreak prison abolition story that I have been sitting on the idea for years. And when Zoraida was like, "Do you want to write for this? You can write anything." This was finally my chance because I could not figure out. There's no way I could make it a whole novel. But I also had nowhere to put it. Like I was just like, I don't know where this idea is going to go. And so I just was like, I have an idea. Let's go. Let's do it. And it happened. And I'm really proud of it. It's kind of a weird little story of mine. But it was fun to get to do Latinos in space and also to do something, that is very politically dear to my heart and have these kids get to talk about the prison system and talking about things that I hope other kids will get to be able to relate to as they navigate their own world. And also, I believe the only short story I've ever written with an F-bomb in it, which I was also weirdly proud of. Like I've kind of avoided that. You know what it is? I just assume.
I mean, you won like a library award. You can't put F-bombs in your book.
Yeah, and I'm always conscious of like I knew before I was ever gonna get published, like, oh, my stuff's probably gonna get banned, so let me not give them a reason. And now I'm at, by the time I got to this story, I was like, I don't care anymore. It's time. It's ready.
It's time.
I'm here. So that's me. That's my story.
Roll the red carpet. I love it.
Yeah.
Linda?
I just want to make one question. And why do you have to drop the F-bomb in the book I'm going to be debuting in? Do you want me to get banned? That's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. Hi, everyone. I think I'm going to steal what Mark said, and I wrote it. It's really hard to describe a short story without giving everything away. But I think I would say it's the story about a non-binary teen who comes from a family that's been cursed by an ocean goddess for centuries. And when they come back to Puerto Rico, they have to confront anti-Blackness in their family. They have to confront the lies and the hurt that has brought the whole family to the place they are in. And it's just how they confront that and how sometimes things can hurt us, and in other places and in other situations, they can start healing us. So that's my story.
It's a beautiful story. Thank you. Lilliam?
Okay. Yes. Hello. Oh, it's so good to see everyone's certain names that I know on the chat. It's really, I feel all this love, and I just want to shout out to Zoraida for this anthology. I was reading your interview today on Refinery, and I was just like, this is the anthology that I would have loved to have edited. Like, this is the only thing that I would have loved to have done, is this kind of future, what is a brown future? What is a Black future here? And these are the stories that I love to read and write. So thank you for inviting me to be in it. And the Tin Man is a story about, I think you had stated, is a scavenger. She's the lost girl living in the Bronx, and she is trying to take care of herself, and then she ends up having to she finds out that she's not the only person, and she has to make a decision about that, whether to stay or to go. And anyway, so I loved I Am Legend. And I wanted to write my I Am Legend, the only last living girl in the Bronx, living in the projects. I wanted to write that story, so it was my opportunity of rewriting that.
And it starts with a Cardi B song.
I mean, every story should start off with a Cardi B song.
I love it. I also, even though I'm the editor, I contributed a short story to the anthology. It's called Tame the Wicked Knight. And I just really wanted to write a gender bent Hades and Persephone. So it's about a farm boy. It's a fantasy world. It's about a farm boy who can make things grow with like the magic of himself. And he is banished from his little village, and the only way he can redeem himself is by doing this thing called taming the wicked knight, which is killing a monster in the mountains. And when he gets there, he finds it is a beautiful death goddess, and falls in love with her instead. So it is their little story. And I violated my own rule of being like, it's more than 10,000 words long. It is now a novelette. But it's fine. It's my anthology. I could do it. But I think that what we see here is just the range of all of the different stories. I want to talk about how the diaspora, all of the themes of Latinidad, from Ecuador and South America to the Caribbean to the borders to Mexico. And I think that just like it, when we translate it into fantasy and science fiction, it's always going to look different, right? So the American idea that Latinos are all the same, it is a Hollywood myth. And I think this anthology is an example of that. Sorry, Julie Murphy, stop texting me. Keeps calling me right now. And I'm like, I'm on a panel. Stop calling me. Blocking on my screen. So let's see. Mark, you're up. So you talked a little bit about the structure of your story. But I want you to talk about the short stories that you have submitted to me and Natalie Parker in Vampires Never Get Old. You experiment with format, right? The story from Vampires and it's epistolary via a Tumblr type of post, right?
Yeah.
And this is like a transcript of something. Why do you like making the people who produce the books their lives difficult?
I mean, let's also be clear. There's no one's life that's made more difficult than my own, because I can't seem to write just a normal story where everything happens chronologically, and it's a whole problem. I mean, this in the past year alone, I wrote a time travel book that has like 5 timelines. Now I will never do that again. And I just finished drafting a YA book that is in 2 timelines that are out of order because I'm not normal. I think part of it comes from wanting to challenge myself. I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm done challenging myself. This is too much. But I always liked and gravitated towards authors who played with form, or who played with time. Like when I think about how much, and it is such a well-earned cliche of a book to like reference or whatever, but I think about like how many times I read like 100 Years of Solitude and just was like, how the notion of time plays out over that book, and just being like, I want to write epic stuff like that all the time. And so with this one, it is interesting though, because you and the editors had a really interesting suggestion that was not in the original one. In the original draft of it, it was just the transcript. And you had asked, I think it was you actually, who had asked, can we see a little bit of what's happening outside of it? And I remember initially being like, well, no, I just wanted to be the transcript because I wanted it to just be this world. And then when I thought about it for a while, so there's actually a scene, there's a character, I think her name is Ramona. Is that her name? Yeah, Ramona, who is experiencing it. So the bulk of the story is her experiencing the manifesto, but then I loved giving it that extra little kick of what is the context of it, like when does she receive it in the timeline. And so yeah, it was a little bit extra fun and getting to see everything through the lens of a person who is going through all of this. But basically I'm a lot. That's just I'm a lot all the time.
And we love you for that. You're perfect, just the way you are. A little Bridget Jones in there for you. I've been watching a lot of rom-coms lately. So What's wrong with me? Okay, we are writing from a place of diaspora. I just said that. What does I feel like when I'm writing, I always want to ask a question: how does something become Latinx science fiction and fantasy? Right? Because if we get to space, like in Star Wars, Latin America doesn't exist. So how do we code for space poppies? Right, like we put that onto these characters. I pronounce Poe Dameron like Poe Cameron. Poe Dameron. And so like when Latin America doesn't exist, how do we translate science fiction and fantasy into our worlds, right? If we're writing in secondary worlds or in space, for instance, in Anna Marie McLemore's story, and David's story takes place 700 years in the future, right? We've colonized Jupiter because of course we have. And so the world changes. And how do we as writers deal with that? I would love to hear your opinions. Anyone can take this. Lilliam?
Sure. I guess what with me is because, we're all huge fans of, let's say, Star Wars or science fiction works, or, Ray Bradbury. I grew up reading those kind of books. And every time I would read them, I would find these
I'm gonna fight you on Pato. Sorry.
Oh no, Amparo. And then it's like, I'm just like wondering, like, I would always picture these characters as like, what would my family do? What would my brothers and I do if we were in that situation? So it is like we are putting or for me, Puerto Rican flags everywhere. But I don't know. I just think it's important for us to even create our own stories. That we don't have to put all the emphasis on these projects that have already been created that did not include us in the beginning, that we can actually create our own mythology, our own science fiction worlds that does not have to nod to white authors. Anyway, I don't know if that's my question. Maybe I went on a tangent.
We love tangents.
Do I sound like a hater? I'm not. I'm just saying, like, for me, it's really super important and powerful to have an anthology like this, because our future, we are claiming our existence and our future, in our own hands by our own writing. So I think that's what I meant.
Anybody want to add? Linda?
Está bien, mija, está bien. I was gonna just say that I think that a lot of science fiction and fantasy focuses on this constant battle between survival and death. And I think we as Latin Americans have had a lot of that. Like, our ancestors were fighting for their lives. We exist because there was a fight between colonization, and we decided to be resilient, and we are here. We're still here because we were strong. And I think science fiction and fantasy is something that really gives way for us to explore that battle between existing in a world that doesn't want us and thriving. So I think my answer would not be like, how do we create Latinidad in a world where there is fantasy? Because we don't have to create it. Our own existence is fantasy and magic enough for us to just make stories about it. And our resilience is magic enough to be fantasy and science fiction.
I love that. Mark?
Yeah, all of that. I would also say, on a more subtle, like we're thinking about structure, stories and whatnot, like and themes and there's just such a long tradition of like revolutionary fiction and fiction that is part of the resistance, because our history has had to be that. And so writing in that vein, I think you can find Latinidad in any sort of story about the struggle. And I especially love getting to write that with victory at the end of it, instead of getting to reimagine how things have gone for so many people in our community. I think you can also just do just very literal things too. Like when I was rewriting this to add the sort of like bookended scenes to this short story, I was still in New York, and I remember being like, okay, I want this character to be missing food. And I was like, what do I miss? And I was like, oh, I haven't had a pupusa in a really long time. Or really, like, it'd been too long. And I remember writing the scene, and then like a day or two later, getting on the train to go to Queens, because I would heard that was the only place in New York that actually has good pupusas. And it was correct. They were delicious. But like even little things like that, like here's a character who is thousands upon tens of thousands of hundreds of thousands of miles away from Earth, and yet still has this grain of something that is so specific to them and their culture and their upbringing or whatnot that connects them to their humanity. Like that's the thread throughout it, is she just misses this thing that she hasn't had in a long time. And I think there's nothing more representative of the diaspora than that. Like you either leave home, you're uprooted, you have to go so far away from where you're originally from, and what are the things that you take with you? So those are the sort of things I think about when writing like fantasy and science fiction in particular.
Yeah, I haven't written a lot of anything in the sci-fi space, but in fantasy specifically, when I like, for instance, like writing the Brooklyn Bruja series, I was creating my own magical system, right? And I feel like I got so many reviews being like, thank you for teaching me about Latin culture and Latin religion. And I'm like, but it's not like, I mean, it's okay. Like if somebody wants to start a cult based on the gods that I created, I would love that. Just, include me, please.
You had actually warned me about that too. When I was writing Each of Us a Desert, and like probably like a year before it came out, you were like, you're doing secondary fantasy, just be warned. People are going to ask you questions assuming it's autobiographical. And I get people who come up to me and are like, what was it like growing up as a cuentista? And I was like, no, that's not a thing. Like, it's not real. I mean, it is based on like the sacrament of confession in the Catholic Church. So I was like, I could talk about that, but they don't want to hear that answer. That's not the answer that they're interested in. They're just like, oh, this belief system seems so rigid. Was it hard growing up underneath it? And I'm just like,
Bro.
I don't like, bro, like, what? How do I even answer that question?
Yeah, I think it's very frustrating because I feel like, J.J.R. Tolkien, he's dead now, so he doesn't have to answer for himself. But, nobody's like, did you believe in your elves, like in the elves that you created and the gods that you created, right? Because he's borrowing from Norse and Celtic stuff. But I feel like we don't have the same luxury, and that's really frustrating. It's something that has frustrated me for a decade of my career. In May 1st, I will have been in this business for 10 years. On that day, I will turn into a dove and fly away from this earth and complete my transformation. My journey will be complete. That's what happens when you hit 10 years in the publishing industry.
Does that count as magical realism?
It is magical realism, yes. So
of course it is. That's what happens to all of us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, I want to tell a funny story about Linda here. Almost did not submit a story to the anthology. Can you please tell us that story?
I was actually thinking about that this morning because I was thinking like, oh my God, how many things I would have lost if I hadn't sent that. 10 minutes before deadline.
10 minutes before I closed down the page.
Yes. I don't know. I was just self-rejecting myself from the beginning. It was a journey writing the story, right? Because it's a story about hurt. So it was a journey getting it into the page. And then when it was over, I just didn't think anyone would want to read anything like it. So I was sitting in front of my computer for the whole day, the story was finished. I had it there. The email was written. Everything was in the email. I just needed to press send. And I woke up that day at 8 a.m., I think. And I was sitting right in front of my computer like, you just have to click it. It's not going to happen if you don't click it. Go on. And I stayed there. I even remember that my mother brought me food that day because I was like, no, I'm still working on my story, working the courage to send it, right? And I stayed there all day until like 11 and 49 or 48. And I said, you know what? I guess I have to do it. And I sent it. And I actually was like, okay, that was nice. I can forget about this now. Nothing is going to come out of this. And then when Zoraida wrote to me, I literally burst out in tears. Like, it was... I was actually in class that day when you wrote to me to say I had gotten in, and it was Zoom University. I just had to turn off the camera, cry, get everything back, and go on. But yeah, that's the story of how I almost don't send this story.
I mean, I think that this is a lesson to anybody watching. Like, you have to shoot your shot. And I'm so glad that you did, because your story is beautiful. And I think that I was already done with Orquídea Divina, but I think like the message of like we saw in Encanto, right, of toxic elders in our families. What does it mean to actually forgive? What does it mean to actually heal? And I think your story just really, really does that. But thank you so much for writing it and for contributing and getting over your self-sabotaging. But because it is really scary. It is really, like, this industry has not been welcoming, I feel, to a lot of us. And so it's not your fault that you felt that way. It was publishing. You know.
Thank you for sharing your story and sending it. I'm in awe, because that, to me, I really did get emotional. I don't know, like, because I understand what that feels like. I think we've all been in that position where we're in self-doubt and we're like, no one is going to like this story. It's not worth it. And I'm just like, we've all heard this. And my goodness, it breaks my heart to think how many other writers who don't even try to send it because of that fear. And anyway, so I'm glad you did.
So this question starts with, we all write sad things, but we also have joy too. I mean, I read the end of Lilliam's short story and I was crying, and I was like, the bunny. No spoilers. I was literally crying. I was crying. I cried at almost all the stories, I think. Some were actually happy, you know, like Anna Marie's. But how do we balance? What is the act of balancing writing short stories that come from trauma and sadness and angst, and also putting that spin of like, there's a little bit of hope? Because at the end of the day, I think that the thing that separates young adult fiction from adult fiction, and I know this is controversial, is hope, right? Is the hope at the end of a story. So take it away, Mark.
Why me?
Because I already called on the other two.
Oh boy, I don't know. I think with this one, I knew the ending. Like, I knew what the last line was going to be, and I knew it was like such a beautiful middle finger that I was like, oh, there's already joy in this. So that actually made it so that, because part of what I was wondering was, if this is a manifesto, this is this message that these people are leaving behind, how much detail is going to be there, and how much do they want to go into it? And so knowing that there was joy at the end, I kind of actually was like, oh, I don't need to go into too much detail about how traumatic this has been. It can sort of take, like, you can have like a poetic justice or poetic inference of what is actually going on. In general, I find that my young adult tends to be sadder than my middle grade. My middle grade tends to be pretty upbeat and wacky and weird. And then
your middle grade made me cry. What are you talking about?
It's three sad, like five sad things. Okay, anyway, that isn't the point. I didn't know I was going to sign up and be attacked during this event. Oh boy, actually, now that I say that a lot, I'm like, wait till you read the next middle grade, because that one is going to make everyone lose their minds. Anyway, the way I take it is I kind of look at the body of my work and where I want to sort of land with things. And with this one, I was like, okay, I can be a little bit more in your face. So I feel like it's going to end on this victorious note. But I think there needs to be room for things that maybe are a little sadder or a little bleaker. Like I think about the short story I wrote for Universe of Wishes, this story called Unmore about magic, everyday magic and heartbreak and breakups. And I think it's the bleakest thing I've ever, there is not a happy ending in that story. And I get messages from people who are like,
are you okay?
Well, no, I mean, that's what I get from kids in school visits. They're like, are you in therapy? Did you have a lonely childhood? I'm like, okay, thanks. But no, I get messages from people who say, thank you for like being honest about how upsetting a breakup can be, for example. And like, sometimes you get to the end of it and it doesn't actually feel great. And part of what helps moving on and helps people heal is actually saying, no, this was awful. Like, this was an awful experience and I wish I could erase it and I wish I didn't go through it. And so sometimes honesty can be the thing that actually leads to something very positive and joyful. But in this case, yeah, I really wanted this to feel, you get a taste of the darkness, but it is victorious and you feel great by the end of it.
Anyone else?
Go next, Lillian. I'm going to call in.
Sorry. Yes. I wrote, the story was written obviously we're during pandemic. So I've been down. Everything I write about has been really down and sad. And I felt that this story was a reflection of how I felt. I felt really in mourning and in grief of all the stuff that we're missing out, of all the things that my kids are missing out, of the deaths, stuff like that. So I was just, that feeling of being in a cage, and just being stuck in your house. And so that's where that character came from. And yes, hope. There's hope in this story, but there's also fear of what the future might bring. So there's the fear of the future, but there's a little bit of hope as well. And so I needed that. And that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah.
For the most
but
part.
I also love that in your story, there's also this idea of uncertainty, but the idea that you have to take the leap because it's the only way to survive. Right.
Oh my
goodness. And I think that is so important. And it's such a powerful message too.
And I think that is exactly what we're all doing, right? It's just like, really believing that there is a community out there that is saving each other, right? And it's really the core of everything that I try to write. But this story really reflects that. Thank you for reminding me. Zoraida.
Yeah. Linda, how do you balance the joy with the serious stuff?
I think in this particular story, the first thing that came to me was the first line, which is when Abuela told me she loved me, we all pretended we couldn't smell it, the lie. And when that came to me, the first thing I thought was, how can I make this happy? Because it's not that I don't like writing bad endings or unhappy endings, but at the time I was writing the story, I was tired. I was really tired of always seeing brown and black bodies end up in bad situations. Even when the story was supposed to be hopeful, in the end, they were left so hurt, so broken. And I was like, I can't write this, because if not, I will never finish anything I try to write forever. I can't just write trauma right now. So I took it upon myself to try to think of what could help cure, not cure, but maybe my brain is
Heal?
having like a Spanish fart right now.
Dilo en español.
Como que intentar mejorar un poco la situación, trying to make it better for Gabe and how it would be better for them, not maybe for the rest of the family, not maybe for me, what I would like, but what would make this particular character happy. And that was my mission throughout this story. Like in that particular instance, I was aiming for the hope. I was aiming for the love, because that was what I thought I needed to write at the moment.
Yeah. I love that. I think that for me, the question that I'm always trying to answer, other than after 18 novels, how do I heal my daddy issues? The thing that I'm trying to answer is, how do you make love work, right? Mark, your face. I love when I talk and then Mark turns around and just scratches their head, like like I'm not here. Yeah, like how do you make love work? And I think that I really need all of my characters to go through hell, walk through fire, and then figure it out. Also, I kind of want this to be the opening act of a novel. I don't know if I'll ever get to write Tame the Wicked Knight as a novel, but maybe one day when I have 2 seconds to myself.
Can we actually? I think that's interesting too for everyone here. Have you thought of your short story as being part of a novel? Like, has it allowed you to think about the world and be like, oh wait, actually, can this be more?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, definitely, right? Because I would love to write that one person by themselves. I want to see what that looks like. I want my I Am Legend brown girl, in the project. I would love that. So maybe one day, not now, but someday, maybe.
Yeah, I love that. What about you, Linda?
Yeah, actually the story was supposed to be like a full novel at the beginning. But then I decided that, again, I didn't want to deal with the trauma at the moment. But I might be able to deal with the trauma at a later point. So I might be able to like actually flesh out the Garcia family and everything that has to do with the curse that the whole story revolves around. That would be cool.
Yeah, I want actually other stories in the anthology that I want into novels. Nina Moreno and her tree boyfriend. I really want to know what happens after the story's over. I want to know what happens in Circe's story. It's just, there's a lot. Mark, I feel like your story is also the opening chapter of like what happens after the jailbreak, right? Like,
and it's interesting you say that because I have no interest in exploring the before. That's why I set the story where it was, is I wanted to deal with the jailbreak in this interesting way, because I just didn't want to, like you're talking, Linda, I didn't want to sit in the trauma of it and be like, I feel like that could be, I feel like sometimes it is actually easy to write the trauma because it's so dramatic and it is so difficult and it's so easy to pull emotions, but I didn't really want to sit in it and wanted to focus more forward. So if I was to write more, it would totally be what happens when they get back to Earth. Like that's so interesting to me. I don't have an answer, but yeah, like I feel like there's something much more propulsive in what comes next.
Yeah, and actually Danny Jose Older is a prequel to his book Flood City, which I can't remember if it was YA or middle grade, but it's a Daniel book. So we love it. Okay. I have some just regular fun questions. And for everybody in the chat, leave us some ask a question questions. We have one, and it's Mark. What is this? Mark. Zoraida. You asked me. Okay.
We'll get to it later. It's a very important question, though.
Fine. Okay. These are just a fun round of questions, okay? Fantasy or science fiction? You can't think too much about it. Just answer. Mark, go.
Science fiction.
Linda.
Fantasy.
Lillian.
Science fiction.
Ah,
Sure.
fantasy. Okay. You can read one book forever. What book do you read? I know Linda's.
Pride and Prejudice.
I would also want people to answer this in the chat. Mark, I know you just glanced back longingly at your shelf.
Give me 10 more seconds.
All right, I got
Okay.
it. Frankenstein, because I read it every year.
Okay. See, I'm trying to decide if I want a horny book or if I want like an enjoyment book, because it's either Six of Crows or Priest by Sierra Simone. I think I'll go with Six of Crows.
Okay. That torpedoed any answer I could give. Completely. I will. Okay, wait. No. I know what it is. Because I think it's a perfect book and every word is exactly where it needs to be. And I say this all the time. I don't care. We Are Okay by Nina LaCour.
Oh,
It's just
yeah.
perfect. And it
so
just,
good.
every word is exactly where it needs to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
I love it. Okay, cool. What is the best Latino dish?
I'm gonna say pasteles. During Christmas time, go arroz con gandules. The traditional Christmas joint.
I love those. I truly love it. In Ecuador, we have this dish called seco de pollo, which is like a stew, and it could be made from goat or chicken or just like rabo, like oxtail. But I prefer the chicken, and it is my perfect meal. And it's made with like I don't know the other word for it, but lulo. I don't know how you say it here. But
we also call it lulo. So I don't know.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know how to say it in English.
I don't know of all time. Like I can't. Can I just do the one I just had this week? I found no. I do like them, but if it's gonna be the best, shouldn't I be eating it more often?
Sure.
So,
but also access to it, Mark. If I had access to Ecuadorian food, I'd eat it every day. But I don't live at home anymore.
I am gonna get real spicy here because if I had to choose, because they are somewhat similar. I mean, they are very different, but somewhat similar. I would actually choose arepas over babusas. I like them more. Well,
what kind? Corn ones or flour ones? We make flour ones.
No, corn ones. How dare you? Oh, cancel Zoraida. I was gonna say I found last week when I went on a date, which we'll talk about that later.
Excuse me.
Hold on. Get it together, Zoraida. I went to a Oaxacan place here in Atlanta that was fantastic, and I had never had this before. And like there is a very specific type of mole that is specific to Oaxacan cuisine. It tends to be a lot sweeter than most of them, but I had pato con mole, and it was so good. It was so, and I was like, that's the meal I want. I would have this meal once a week for the rest of my life. It was so good with blue corn tortillas too. Oh, it was fantastic. I'm reading the chat. All right.
I'm still trying to decide on what I want to say. Like, estoy entre mofongo y piñón.
I won't let you. I won't make you choose. You can choose both.
Okay, mofongo and piñón. But I would have to forfeit my Puerto Rican ID if I don't say mofongo, but piñones though. Like.
I understand it. Look, I have been eating very well in this island. It is a beautiful, beautiful place. Okay, we have 10 minutes left, I think, because when events started in the half hour, I just lose the ability to count. So for those of you who are watching, if you haven't gotten the anthology yet, Please get it and support us. I love you. I'm gonna answer Melanie's question here. Did you have another story that didn't make it into the anthology? No, because so the way that, okay, I'm gonna explain just like a real quick breakdown of how anthologies work in traditional traditional publishing, because I've done now a self-published anthology and a traditionally published anthology. And so the way that it works is you invite an author and they send you a pitch, and you either sell the anthology with the authors in mind, but then they have an X amount of time. You have a year to write a story, and sometimes you write it in the day before you turn it in, like me. Right? It's just like, oh, I have a year to write 5,000 words. 24 hours before the deadline is when you get started. Were you gonna say something, Mark?
Didn't you write 10,000 words, first of all?
I did, but I wrote it over the course of 2 days.
I was going to say, you don't actually know this, Zoraida. There was another idea I had that I ended up discarding to do the Outbreak one.
Okay, tell us more.
It is a haunted house story with a very evil, like the evilest twist I've ever thought of, like rethinking what haunted houses was. But as we were talking about what the anthology was, I was like, I feel like I need to save this for something else. And I went with the space jailbreak, because I just felt like it was so weird and out there that I will never find another venue for that short story. I was like, this is it. This is the only one that fits. But there was a haunted house story that I've wanted to do for a really long time that it did not. I decided to push it aside.
Does anybody else have another story they would have gone with? I feel like the stories that we chose were just so perfect that, like, yeah, it's the ones that work. Here we go. Nina Moreno asks, would you kiss a tree monster? I would. Just have to be wary of splinters.
That's disgusting, first of all.
I mean, look, when Nina turned in or pitched the story to me, all I remember, this is revisionist history, but all I remember is like her being like, "Hey, like, would you ever kiss a tree?" Or like kiss a tree man, and then she was like, "Let me write this monster story," and I said, "Absolutely." So.
I mean, what's the tree's like moisturizing routine? Like,
It's a tree.
It sounds very hippie. Aren't
like,
the hippies kissing the trees already?
Yeah.
No, they're hugging the trees.
It depends on what like type of tree, like an oak or like like any
of the birch tree
have rough, but like birch and willow do not have rough bark. So if you're more into like the smooth tree monster men,
like a manscaping tree, like
I don't use that word in this context at all. Like that is horrible. No, but like I think like if you're gonna get with like a weeping willow versus a mangrove, those are two fundamentally different experiences.
God, you're such a fancy author.
I'm gonna say it. I feel like the mangrove is sexier because it's in the swamp.
Also, look, all of this about trees, like I don't know the names of trees. This is very like I'm hardcore New Yorker. Like
I'm from New York. We have one tree.
We have one tree. It's in the park. That's it. Like,
I don't think I need to answer this question. Like everyone knows, I love monster romance.
Yeah,
that should say it.
Yeah.
Amparo said smooth wood only, and you're fired. You're banned. So thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for this question, Nina. I love it so much. Amparo also asked, did you know that Zoraida eats her meat medium rare? Absolutely. Yes, I do. The rarer, the better. I want that steak to moo at me. Mark, can you explain to me what this question is?
Sure. And this is, I feel like this is actually a great question for anyone because it's about two different things. But you had mentioned earlier talking about the elements of your story is the death goddess or the farm boy and reversing, Hades and Persephone. So to make it applicable to you in your own personal romance, let's say you're writing a fantasy or a fairy tale about yourself. Are you going after the death god, or is your ideal romance with the farm boy? Like, do you want Hades or the farm boy?
20-year-old Zoraida who should be dead in a ditch by now. Like, I'm surprised I survived past the age of 25 with all the things that I did. Right. Would have chosen the god of death for sure. Yeah. But Zoraida now, 34, I'm a little bit smarter. I would go for the farm boy, whereas Linda is choosing chaos over here.
¿Por qué no los dos? But I think like the farm boy has stability. The farm boy can also lift you up and put them on their shoulder and carry you somewhere.
Yeah, that's true. And also,
when I say it out loud, but
if there's a blight on like agriculture, we'll always have food.
Or what if there's a blight on your tree side piece and you need someone to take care of your tree boyfriend?
It's he's like a tree gynecologist.
The death god's going to be like, well, I want them to be dead because then they come to my realm and then they basically are stealing your boyfriend. The things I think about.
No, look.
Okay.
I feel like we should do maybe a speculative anthology that deals with all of these questions. I feel like this timeline is cursed so far. But absolutely, I really appreciate that, Mark. Thank you so much for bringing deep conversation to our anthology. Very serious author. People who expect nothing less. Okay. Melanie asks, to what story would your characters from the anthology cross over to? And I don't think we need to limit it to the anthology stories, but I guess any stories. Like, where would your character cross over to well or badly? Mark.
Ooh, I feel like the unnamed, because the narrator in my story is unnamed, even though I did have a whole backstory and all that in case I got to it. But I think my character would fall head over heels for Isabel in Circe's story. Like completely. So that's what I want to see, that romance. True. Circe.
I was also gonna say I was gonna say either Nina's story.
I wasn't gonna call him that, Circe, for the record, but it was on my mind. That is
Bone Daddy. Thank you. I see, like in my story, like I feel like Aurelio, which is like I also have a Garcia Marquez reference, right? Aureliano, he would go into either Nina's story and just hang out with the tree because he can speak tree.
Yeah.
But my death goddess would hang out with Circe's story. So I can, I have so much to choose from. Crossover event. Lilliam?
Well, I mean, I think I could only think of Danielle Jose book because we're all launching and getting the hell away from Earth, and so I want to see what that looks like, if we were like where we end up landing and then having to deal with each other. So yeah, I think that would make sense to me.
Linda?
Para mí que hay fiesta en la historia de Circe, because I think that maybe Gabe and Vita would get really well. Like, they would get along because they have, like, their stories are about identity and getting to understand themselves. And I think they would be besties. So, yeah, fiesta en la casa de Circe.
Look, I don't want to sound like, I don't know, super twee, but there's so much synergy, right? I'm not trying to sell you some cryptocurrency, but there is synergy in this anthology because of this reason, like because our stories feel linked, and it's like it's big magic. It's like it's the big magic of a shared identity, that it's not something like we can't help it, right? Like we're interconnected in so many different ways, and you can tell that because we can like plop our people into one another's worlds, and we didn't write them together, we wrote them separately, but through like the force, and the magic of story, I feel like they've just coalesced into something really, really beautiful. And so I'm always going to be proud of this anthology, and it's going to live on shelves forever. And I think that now we just need to see more Latinx anthologies, because I never intended for this to be the only one. I just thought it should be the first, like one of many more to come. And I'm so proud of all of you. Thank you so much for doing this with me. And since we have 1 minute left, I'm gonna give you guys if you could say one last thing, whether about your story or what you're reading, just final shout outs.
I'll just say again, Zoraida, we love you and we appreciate. I know I appreciate you, and I love that I'm a part of this and this conversation. And that's it. Buy it. Reclaim the Stars. Buy it. Buy many copies. Give it to everybody.
Linda.
Ay, bendito, mija, estoy pensando. I don't know. I'm just very glad that I got the chance to like debut with so many authors that meant so much to me while I was growing up. Means so much to me right now because they opened the world for me to believe that my story was worth telling. Like, I just want to say this before we leave, because Mark, I actually started writing one of the novels I'm more passionate about because I read one of the interviews you did for oh my god, I forgot the title right now because my brain is full of Isha Vaz the Desert. You did a interview in which you said that you wanted to create this world of fantasy that was not like subjected to the things that people think Latinas should write about. Mm-hmm. And when you wrote that interview, I was like, you know what? That's true. I've been holding myself captive inside what people expect me to tell. And I just want to create something because I want to, because it's what I want. So yeah, Mark, I'm really, really, really happy that I'm in this anthology with you and with y'all, because every single story, like, even if I wasn't part of the anthology, like, buy it because I'm in there, you know. But even if I wasn't part of this anthology, this would have been such a powerful thing for me to read, because there's so much magic in all the diversity that it contains. There's so much magic in all the stories we tell. And it's just beautiful. And I'm very, very happy and glad and thankful that I'm able to be part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for making me cry. Mark.
No, we have to end on that one. That's perfect. I don't need to say anything.
Thank you so much.
Thank
ER,
you.
If you would like the floor back. Thank you so much, everybody. We love you so much. Oh.
Oh. Well, I'm trying to come back. My computer's being very slow.
Just the voice above us.
I'll just be the disembodied voice. Thank you all so much for being with us. And I want to encourage everybody watching at home to buy Reclaim the Stars. Here we go. 17 Tales Across Realms and Space. If you weren't already convinced, I am sure you are now after this lovely conversation. So many good folks who aren't even with us tonight are in this book, so it's a real treasure trove. And again, it's got a beautiful cover, so much happening in it, and so many of the all-stars of contemporary YA and middle grade lit are in this book. So pick it up, love it. Send it to your local library, donate to your local library, encourage your child's librarian at their school to carry it. As we all know, representation matters. So the more we can get these books into libraries, the better. And give it to a young person in your life. So thank you all so much. Congratulations on this wonderful work. I hope that you all stay safe and well. And until next time, take care.
Thank you.
Bye.